That actually worked. Oh. Well, that made my throats a lot worse. Ah. Love that. Love that. Thanks, Body. Thank you very much, Body, for burning my throat. Well, we're going to push through and see how we go. So starting off with Unforgettable, That's What You Are, which is the third, I want to say, in the Antimemetics Division series. It's also quite long. Let's have a look at the one after that. A little smaller, but still quite long. Third one, again, about the same length. And then the Pokey one, weirdly enough, actually, for a Pokey one, that's actually quite short. Now the song, yes. It's like, I always remember that as being a song, because in one of the things I used to watch as a kid, called Reboot, as part of a talent show, someone went to sing that song. I went, Unforgettable! I have no idea what the next line is. The first one, Marion on the 05 Circle with Paul Kim in the Anti-Meme Slash film. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I miss some 90s TV shows, I really do. They even tried to reboot, and it's fucking failed. We're going to shop say still minus 32 seats, so I'll just stick the header in tomorrow. There. L. It's finished. Lynn Marness is more than 90 years old and hasn't stood at his full height in 10. He was a tower of a man in his prime, 2 meters tall and built like a boxer. Nearly nobody he ever met was able to look at him straight in the eye, at least not and tell him no. Illness has gradually eaten away at that over the years. He feels as if he lives at the bottom of a deep bath. Everybody he ever meets looking down at him from slippery, unscalable walls, none of them able to reach down to help him. He spent his final months crumpled up in bed like a dying spider, chained into a corpse's colour ahead of time. It might have been bearable if he'd lost his mind, but he remembers what he used to be. A leader, a powerhouse. He used to be able to alter the course of terrible events for the better. To get justice, he used to protect people. L, you can wake up now. There's a warm wind through his thin, colourless hair, and there's direct sunlight coming down on him now, and the heat is filling him up like a tonic. He's outside. It's been too long since he was last outside. When he opens his eyes, he sees his lake, the one in the northwest, which he used to have all to himself every summer. He's on a boat, his boat, lying on a blanket laid on the back. A few kilometres away behind them is a little lake house, empty. It's perfect. He didn't know he had the strength left to safely leave the hospital, let alone travel this far. But if he'd put his mind to it and selected a final moment, this might have been it. Do you remember me? Marnus looks, with eyes which are strengthening. The woman speaking is seated on the deck beside him, attentive. She has a large plastic box full of medical supplies open in front of her, and a light suit jacket laid on the desk beside it. She has her sleeves rolled up so she can work. As he watches, she carefully disposes of a needle. A dim memory surfaces and starts taking shape. The woman is twice as old now as when he knew her last, and visibly twice as confident. It would be difficult to forget her. He taught her everything he could remember at the time. He remembers her as a field agent. He remembers sending her through hell, a fistful of times. Marion. L, the woman softly explains. You died. You died surrounded by grieving family. They loved you very much, and they cried over you. The funeral for the fake is in a few days, but unfortunately you won't be able to see it yourself. You're dead now, and this is what comes next. Marion. Hutchinson. Mars feels gold spreading through his bones. Miracle juice. It's Wheeler now, but she doesn't correct him. When you retired from the Foundation, Elle, we did what we did to all of us who retire. What all of us agree to when we sign up. We gave you some medicine which made you forget. As you stepped out the door for the last time, all the work you did for us, great work which saved lives, evaporated away, and your cover story sealed over those years became reality. That's why you've spent your whole retirement believing you're a former section chief at the FBI. It's what you wanted. It's what we wanted. It's what you agreed to. But you alone agreed to something else as well, and you must be starting to remember now what that something else was. I've injected you with a serum which throws the human aging process into hard reverse, and it affects everything. Organs, tissue, memory. You'll be coming up on it soon, remember? Yes, Mars croaks, remembering dizzy. You signed over your final 12 hours to us. You asked for a full and happy and well-deserved retirement. But now, for the last day, you work for us again, because of one particular job. I have it in writing here, you see. Do you recognize your signature? And mine? I witnessed. Yes. Do you remember who you are? Dr. Lynn Patrick Marness of the Foundation, he says, Anti-Memetics Division founder. William smiles with relief. It's good to see him again. We need some memories from you, she explains. Memories which no one else in the world has access to, and which are buried so deeply we can't extract them without killing you. So this afternoon, that's what we're going to do. We're going to extract those memories, and once we're done, you'll be dead. The fuck? Mars has already begun to regress to the time when he himself set this wheel in motion. He remembers very clearly, discovering the mystery in his own head, the blank spots which he couldn't explain and couldn't save the access with any kind of chemical or physical technique. He remembers deferring the mystery until now. What happened in 1976, Wheeler asks. Mars sits up. His skin is beginning to clear and his breathing is improving. He feels as if his brain is cleaved in two by a wormhole, such that his eyes are focusing on different time periods. In his right eye, he sees the lake and the boat he's dying on. In his left, he sees a collage of electrifyingly familiar past faces and places. Bart Hughes with his grin and thick glasses on baby face, looking like some kid dressed up as a Foundation researcher. The original Site-48 crew. Great text, but a hopeless excuse for a softball team. Young Marion with steel-strong nerves and a mind like a laser, suits and lab coats and MTF operatives, and everywhere paperwork and floods of serial numbers. He starts to speak. 1976 was the year he founded the division. He brainstormed the whole thing in one legendary week, hammering out the science, then distilling the first chemical monastic with help of a hand-picked trio of assistants. The first anti-memetics researchers. No anti-memetic SCPs had been observed up to that point. The entire operation was a shot in the dark, and yet the team immediately struck gold. Passive black holes of information, active predatory infovores, unrememberable worms which cover the human skin like dust mites. Contagious bad news, self-sealing secrets, living murders, Chinatowns. Wheeler wonders if there might be something more serious awry with Marness's head. His vision of events is hopelessly romantic. In Wheeler's experience, nobody looks back on Foundation work fondly. But it's all too fast, Marness says. Special containment procedures take time to develop, much more time than I took. The Foundation as a whole acquires about a dozen new SCPs annually. I found that many in 1 year, essentially single-handedly. It was too easy. It was as if I knew it all already and was just catching up. And then, one day I realised I couldn't remember my life before anti-memetics. I knew I'd been a Foundation operative for decades prior. That was where I got the authority to start my own division. But there was nothing else there. There was a wall in my mind, which even monestics can get me past. I went to the paper archives and looked at my own personnel file, and Miles trails off. Not because he's forgotten what to say next. It's deliberate. The trailing off is exactly what happened. You woke up back at your desk half a working day later, remembering nothing, Wheeler says. You went through the loop a dozen times before someone realised what was happening and broke you out of it. Wheeler knows all this. The file still exists, and the anti-memetic effect still clouds the back half of it. All of this would be over in a second if any of that back half could be read. Marness goes on. When I assembled the evidence, what I found was, well, a hole. Like a jigsaw with only the edges and corners. So I did the only thing I could do. I looked at the shape of the hole, and together with Bart Hughes and others, I formed a theory. This is not the first anti-memetics division. Before 1976, there was another one. I was part of that division. Possibly I led it. Certainly I am the one known survivor of it. Something happened to the team. Some anti-memetic force chewed up and swallowed the idea of the anti-memetics division itself. Excuse me. I was let off lightly. I lived. The rest of those people, whoever they were, how many of them there were, are missing without trace. Wheeler nods. This much we know already. I was there when you wrote the note, remember? The question is known. It's the answer we can't get to without killing you. It's the answer that we've waited all these years to get at. I'm here to ask you, what happened? Marness covers his right eye and grimaces, trying. He fails. It's not there. You haven't sent me back far enough. There's still that wall there in my head. I remember why the question exists, but I don't remember the answer. I need more. Wheeler stabs his arm and gives him another 10 years. Footnote here. Excerpt from document 1800-47109-L4799-098. User's Guide to Chemical Monestics. The Class X monastic drug is a failed eternal youth serum. X rejuvenates both mind and body up to years, but its effect is temporary, wearing off in a matter of hours. Furthermore, as the drug wears off, the pastime reasserts itself all at once, causing a harmful whiplash effect on the subject's physiology. X can rejuvenate an individual safely by up to 30 days. With stronger doses, the whiplash effect becomes dangerous, and past the threshold of 16 to 18 months, it is fatal in all known subjects. X's restorative effect on the human memory is essentially a side effect of all of this. However, this side effect is so useful it has become the drug's main practical purpose. The Antimemetics Division uses small doses of X to temporarily sharpen or restore memories from recent past. This aids Foundation operatives in the accurate recall of incidents involving memory corrupting entities. Jesus fuck. Marnus seems like another man once the second X dose takes its effect. Wrinkles are sliding back up to his face, muscle mass returned to his limbs. But it takes Wheeler a second to realise the real reason why. She just booted him back across the field/desk agent transition. Marnus has regressed a little way past senior management, the realm where most problems were solved by saying the correct words, and into a time where he survived through physical fitness, situational alertness, and hands-on experience. Marnus gets to his feet for the first time in years. He scans his surroundings, examining the placid golden lake and the sky and the boat itself. He doesn't sit down again. He smooths down his hospital gown, wishing he had a sweater and, separately, some fishing gear. He brushes a hand through new old hair. His sideburns are back. We weren't Foundation at first, he says. The first Antimemetics Division was a US Army project. It ran parallel with the Manhattan during World War II. We called ourselves the Unthinkables. Sounds like a superhero group name. It began as an experiment in advanced propaganda. The objective was to cut through the physical conflict and find a way to rupture the ideological machine, to obliterate the idea of Nazism. After 2 years, enough theory had been developed that the task had been reduced to an engineering problem. Another 2 years, the engineering problem had been reduced as well, and what we built was a very special kind of bomb. Unfortunately, we didn't understand what we'd built. Back then, we didn't have the mnesetics or the shielding we could use to protect ourselves. We didn't understand how far ahead you need to think when you're working with this kind of technology. We got looped. It was textbook, but we built the unthinkable bomb and test detonated it, and it worked perfectly. The bomb destroyed itself and erased its own successful detonation and flattened all of the knowledge which had gone together to build it. We forgot that we'd ever built the bomb at all, and started over. To our credit, we realised pretty quickly what must have happened. There was a 4-year gap in our progress now, and there was no other way to explain it. But by the time we put the pieces together the second time, the war was almost over. The Nazis had been defeated by conventional means, and the Japanese had been broken by the first atomic bombings. So we completed the second anti-memetic bomb, and after that, we sat on it. Marion Wheeler is silent for a long moment. The US Army, she says doubtfully, was secretly developing anti-memetic weaponry as early as the 1940s. We sure were, Marnus says, with more than a hint of pride. Of course, there's no one in the whole world who could back this up. That's right, Marnus says, flashing a smile he hasn't flashed in decades. You only have my word for it. Cute, huh? Still, this is why you resurrected me, isn't it? For the sake of one more good war story. God, I miss shop talk. I resurrected you because I want a very specific question answered, Wheeler says. Although I can see that in a way you've already answered it. This bomb was the means, wasn't it? The old Antimemetics Division. The Unthinkables bombed themselves, somehow. That's right, Marnus says. From context, Wheeler goes on, I assume they knew what they were doing at that time. I assume it was not an accident. It was not, Marnus says. The displaced half of Marnus's brain is anchored in the 70s now, so the true history of the new original Unthinkables is an open book to him, and he reads. After the war, the second bomb collected dust for years. We began sketching improved designs for a third bomb, but around that time, oversight was starting to flicker out. We completed our research and production objectives, and were given no further objectives. Funding became shaky, and we couldn't figure out why. It wasn't entirely clear that the project overseers knew what they were doing, or even they remembered we existed. It was a side effect from the research, of course, one we had no way of managing at the time. In 1951, a cult movement began in Ojai, California. It was wrong. Everything about it was just wrong. In a matter of days, it was a national phenomenon and still growing. It was all over the news. To spread that far in months would have been incredible, but the days were simply impossible. We in the team could see that the philosophy behind the cult was unnaturally contagious. It was the opposite of unthinkable. It was unforgettable. We knew this was what our bomb was designed for. We prompted the overseers for direction, but there were no orders. At the time that the outbreak began, we were a US Army laboratory through and through. 8 days into the crisis, the Foundation acquired us. All the classified research, all the material resources, and all the compliant top staff, including me. Anybody who wouldn't comply was mind-wiped and sent back to the Army. 20 hours after the acquisition, we developed the second bomb and the cult was gone. Nobody remembered it. Nobody remembered being part of it. Zero loss of life, a completely clean detonation. After that is when everything really kicked off. Once we started working for the Foundation, the pace of research ramped up. Every new technological advancement uncovered new hidden SCPs. I passed the Foundation field exams and went out catching ghosts. My life turned into the Twilight Zone. Marnus blinks hard. He covers one of his eyes, then the other. I remember all these different people now. He says, "It feels like my memory is in stereo. Almost every anti-memetics SCP we caught before the wipe in 76, we caught again soon after the wipe. That means I remember 2 acquisition logs for each one. I remember 2 anti-memetics teams. I don't remember who belongs to which side of the wall. Do you remember Goldie Yarrow, the neurologist? Studied the mechanism of anonymously accelerated memory loss? Wrote a library on the subject." Anti-memetic bombs, wonder what that would do to the hate gator. It'd have to be a pretty potent one for it to forget its hatred of everything living. Wheeler doesn't. Dr. Ojibiro, Judy still? L, this is important. Are you at the right place in your own time to remember what happened yet? Marnus focuses, and he discovers that he is. Something changes in his eyes as he stops reminiscing. He speaks more slowly now, his voice almost dropping to a whisper. There is an SCP which your division has never seen. The SCP which my division couldn't contain. The escapee. This is what you wanted, isn't it, Marion? Yes, she says. This is the data I'm killing you for. She's a gap where if she felt there was anything to apologize for, she would apologize. Marnus locks eyes with her. It was eating my division alive. It came at us so hard and so fast that the only way we could stop it was to self-destruct. But we had no site nuke, and in retrospect it is obvious to me now that this was because the SCP had consumed our site nuke first of all. If you know it exists, it knows you exist. The more you know about it, the more it knows about you. If you can see it can see you, and you can see it. You've been looking right at it all afternoon. Wheeler is suddenly acutely aware of her surroundings. There are only 2 boats. There are only 2 of them on the boat. The boat is more than a kilometre away from the lake shores. She hasn't brought any backup with her. There's radioactive prickling in her brain. She doesn't. Red flag. Why didn't I bring any backup with me? That doesn't make sense. There should be a team at the lake house. There should be an MTF operative and a medic here on the boat with me, and the second boat at minimum. Am I all alone out here? Why did I do that? She pulls her gun, but doesn't aim it at Marnus yet. Where is it? Is it in you? Marnus' voice is becoming urgent. He covers both of his eyes again. Destroying all knowledge of it was the only way to destroy it, and restoring my memories was a foolproof way to bring it back. It's in his eyes, most likely his left eye. Wheeler backs up to the other side of the boat, draws a bead on the centre of Marnus' head, and says, "L, are you still in there?" "There's a way to fix this," Marnus hisses, dropping to his knees. He keeps his eyes screwed up and gropes his way forward blindly on his hands and knees. "L, you need to tell me what this thing is." "That's the opposite of what we need to do," Marnus says. "You need to set off another bomb off." "We don't have that bomb. We lost the technology," Wheeler begins. "You've always had it. There's an engineering lab in Site 41. You know it. An underground complex the size of a football field, in pristine condition and totally disused. Why? Think about it. That's where your bomb's installed. But that just sets us back to square one. If I set the bomb off," Wheeler says, knowing full well that she's thousands of kilometers from it, and can't hope to reach it in time anyway. "How do we contain this thing?" "We won't," Marnus shouts. "We can't, ever. Don't you get it? The whole division is looped. We start the division, we run headlong into this thing, and either it eats us or we wipe ourselves out in self-preservation. The idea of anti-memes is as old as forgetfulness itself. Humans have been looping through this problem over and over again since long before the 40s, maybe for centuries." His blindly probing fingers find the medical box. It's too late. As Wheeler watches, a waving black pedipalp clothing in dark hairs forces its way out through Marnus' left eye. Ah! Ah! Marnus screams, still on his knees. He grasps the pedipalp with both hands and tries to break it, but it's solid, as if it has bones inside it. "What is it?" Wheeler shouts at him. "That can't be the whole story. Where is it from? What does it want? Can it reason? Can it speak? Help!" A second spider leg, significantly longer and spindlier, slides out through Marnus' trachea, ruining his throat and voice box and producing a gout of blood. He gurgles. A third leg shoots from his abdomen like a spear. Ah. Wheeler shoots Marnus in the head. Marnus falls forward limp and then rises back up, lifted by the 3 spider appendages as if he is a puppet being controlled by something gigantic and invisible. His arms raised as if suspended by wires. Wheeler squints. She fires 4 more shots over Marnus' head and the likely body mass of the invisible puppeteer, and fires the rest of her clip almost directly into the sky. The whole boat vibrates, along with the surface of the lake, as if responding to infrasound or a localized earthquake. Then the boat shudders violently and starts to lift out of the water, raised by more unseen appendages. Wheeler holsters her gun and goes to the medical box herself, pulling it away from Marnus' floating feet. There's a compartment with Class B amnestic, the fast-acting stuff, in serum form. She does a hurried burst of mental arithmetic, measures out the correct dosage in a syringe, and hands-shaking plunges it into a wrist vein. Ah. The boat is still rising. Whatever the monster is, it's colossally tall. Or maybe it flies. She is, of course, already dosed up to the eyeballs with amnestic drugs, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to perceive any of this. Foundation medical literature warns in the strongest possible terms against putting both kinds of drugs into the same brain. Best case scenario, this ends with her in the hospital. They're 30 meters up in the air now, 10 stories. There's a stabbing pain developing in her left eye. She kicks her shoes off and throws the gun away. She goes to the edge and contemplates the drop for a disbelieving second. She jumps. It takes 2 heart-stopping seconds of freefall for her to hit the water. The chilled hammer blow of the impact is enough to blank her mind out. By the time she surfaces, she doesn't remember where she fell from, or why. And likewise, the skyscraper skies being which clad Mars in the boat have forgotten about her. What the hell? She gasps, treading water. What the hell? Where the hell? There's nothing above her, no explanation, only the symptoms of the drug cocktail given any indication of what just happened. A sensation like hundreds of tiny lumps of hot solder in her brain, and pain and exhaustion spreading to all her tendons. She wants to die. Swim, says part of her. Get to shore first, then you can die. And Warplo, and welcome. The extraction team finds her around dusk, unconscious on the lake shore. They stabilize her in the helicopter, then take her to Site 41 for examination, and to have her system flushed. She spends a solid 8 days at home, detoxifying. No monastics, no amnestics, no exposure to dangerous memory-corrupting SCPs, no work visitors, no work, the doctor also tells her, pointlessly. It isn't anywhere near the first missing event in Wheeler's life, nor is she the first person of the anti-fumetic staff to have such an experience, but the sensation is no less disturbing for its familiarity. As per procedure, she writes a report summarising everything she can remember. The gap in her memory is about 13 hours. Excuse me. Then she adds her report to the extensive, complex map of missing time, which the whole division maintains collectively. There's a map of holes, and the map is becoming large enough that they feel that very faint patterns are gradually forming. The outline of an enemy is becoming visible, or perhaps a group of enemies. When she quizzes the extraction team later, none of them remember who activated the emergency beacon which summoned them. In fact, the beacon itself cut out long before they landed at the lake. Wheeler compares the current size of her division in the best estimate of what it should be. Maybe she needs a few more key people here and there. So assuming the division was fully staffed before the event, maybe those empty roles are the people who died this time around. Maybe one of them activated the beacon, a commendable act by someone now only known to exist because of that single act. It's weeks later that Wheeler discovers the newest hole in her memory. Who founded the division? When? Regretty forgetty overdose. Yep. That's such an incredible line for her. Yeah. So that was Unforgettable, That's What You Are. That was chilling. Actually quite chilling. And we have more. A vehicle out there's brakes just squeaked, and it sounded the exact pitch and tone of my PS5 turning on. And I was like, what the fuck? I didn't press anything on the PS controller. Do you know how to just check? Oh, it's definitely not on. The day my PS5 turns itself on is the day I quit. Thank you for the hydration reminder, next. Right, now on to the next one. Case Colourless Green. Item number, SCP-3125. Object class, Cater. Special Containment Procedures. 3125 is kept inside Cognito Hazard Containment Unit 3125 on the first floor of Site 41. This containment unit is a 10 meter by 15 meter by 3 meter cuboidal room clad in layers of lead, soundproofing and telepathic shielding. Access is through an airlock system at one end of the containment unit. This airlock is programmed to allow only one person to enter the containment unit at a time, and to remain locked until this person exits, before allowing another person to enter. Under no circumstances may any coherent information be allowed to leave the containment unit. This includes written and electronic notes, photographs, audio and video recordings, sound, electromagnetic and particle-based signals, and psi emanations. During the exit cycle, a purge system rigged to the airlock flushes the occupant's memory by flooding the airlock with amnestic gas for 3 minutes. A senior antimemetics division staff member must visit 3125 every 6 weeks, 42 days. End of file. Fuck. You're kidding me. That's the whole entry. That's the whole entry, Wheeler says. Even in the 5th strangest thing Paul Kim has seen in the database, but still, no description, no acquisition report, no test log, no addenda, no clue who built the unit, or when, or how many times it's been visited, or who carried out the previous visits, or what they took in with them, or how long they were in there. Well, obviously Bart Hughes built the unit, Wheeler says, and this cannot be denied. The man's signature style of containment architecture is recognisable a mile out. Sleek, white, plainly impregnable without the aid of extremely heavy tools. Which makes it at least 7 years old. That's 60 visits or more. I guess there are good reasons for the rest of these emissions. Anyway, the timer watchdog says it's time again. I don't like the idea of you routinely exposing yourself to a cognito hazard so dangerous that we can't even write the reason why we can't write it down. Kim says, especially because it's impossible for us to recover any usable information this way. You're going to go in, be incommunicado for 2 hours and come out a smiling amnestic. What do we gain from that? It's just a breach risk. Wheeler hears every word of this and neglects to ignore it all. There's a vague shape of familiarity about the entry as written, and there are a few word choices which reassure her. Banned. There's a vague shape of familiarity about the entry as written. There are a few word choices which reassure her in an intangible way. It was written by someone who knew what they were doing, possibly her. Kim's still talking. We should just scrub that last line from the database entry. There can't be anything good in that room. Wheeler puts the keycard in the slot. The airlight rewards her with a green LED and begins to cycle open. It's built as a slender vertical cylinder with a single opening. The entire thing rotates on its axis. Inside, there's barely room for a single person to stand without their shoulders touching the walls. What are you taking? Kim asks. Wheeler ducks to step in, turns face and shrugs. Stick of gum. I can get you field gear, Kim says, as the airlock begins to rotate again, emitting a low, quiet thrum. Solely as an audible warning that there's machinery in motion. We'll raid inventory. Give me 15 minutes, I'll turn you into a one-woman war. If Wheeler has anything to respond to this, it's cut off by the soundproofing as the airlock rotates. Kim is left alone in the antechamber. He stares at the outer door for a worried moment. He presses his ear to the door for a while, but hears nothing, not even a faint tremble from the airlock mechanism. Hey, Dress. Hey, buddy. Ooh, who wants some scritches? Yeah, someone wants some head scritches. Bonk. Oh, that's a good bonk. This cat will do a fist bump with his head. Amazing. Scritches, yes. Inside, it's pitch dark for a few seconds, then some unseen sensor detects Wheeler's presence and brings the fluorescents up. Half of them anyway, the other half remain inert or flicker aggravatingly. Kibby, yes. I can't do a kiddie screen time with him because I can't pick him up, because medically I'm not allowed to, and also he's not a pick-up cat. He looks very concerned when Callie does it, and he trusts Callie. Doesn't trust me that much. The room's interior walls are made from milky white glass, bulletproof, known hues, and plastered with paperwork, tapered and blue-tacked up in variously coherent messes. Where there's no paperwork, people have drawn directly onto the walls in marker pen. There's a conference table, long and elliptical, covered with more paperwork and a tangle of laptop computers and serpentine power supply cables. Power is returned to the machines and is slowly booting. A data projector warms up and shines a map of the world over the far... shines a map of the world over the far wall, almost lining up with a network of scribbled annotations on the same wall. Post-it notes of all colours litter the carpet like autumn leaves. Other than that, the room is empty. Skimming the paperwork, Wheeler discovers that nearly all of it is handwritten and most of it charts the progress of conversations. Most of the entries are dated and signed, and most of the dates are weeks apart. The conversations are panicked and fearful back and forth about dozens of SCPs, some of them anti-memetic in nature, but none of them obviously related to one another. None of the notes mention 3125. The only name Wheeler recognises is her own, which appears on 1 in 10 of the 20 notes. The notes seem authentic and the handwriting is hers, but her notes also seem as desperate and uncertain in tone as everyone else's. This unnerves her. There are diagrams on the walls too, which are too complex to decode at a glance, but complex enough to make her eyes hurt to look at them. Still lost for a logical entry point to the data, Wheeler curses all her predecessors, asynchronous research, whereby the research topic is forgotten entirely between iterations and rediscovered over and over. It's perfectly standard practice in the anti-memetics division, and her people ought to be better trained than this. There should be an obvious single document to read first, which makes sense to the rest. A primer. Marion, it's me. Wheeler recognises the voice as her own. She moves around the table until she finds the laptop making the noise. There's a video playing, apparently recorded on the laptop's own camera in the room. The Marion Wheeler in the video is seated and looks unfamiliar in a way which takes one watching a moment to put a finger on. Not exhausted, not sick, not physically injured. She's seen herself that way before in the mirror. This woman's willpower is gone. She's beaten. You've guessed already that SCP-3125 is not in this room, she says. In fact, this is the only room in the world where 3125 is not present. It's called inverted containment. 3125 pervades all of reality except for volumes which have been specifically shielded from this influence. This is it. This is our only safe harbour. This room represents the length and breadth of the war. Every component anti-memetics research project finds 3125's fingerprints sooner or later. It manifests all over the world in thousands of different forms. Most of them aren't even anomalous. Some of them we already have catalogued separately in the main database. A very small number of them are even in containment. Impossibly virulent cults, broken arithmetic, invisible spiders as tall as skyscrapers. Well, that was the last one. People born with extra organs which nobody can see. That's the raw data. Those manifestations are troublesome enough to deal with in their own right. Look away for 5 seconds. It happens. The wheeler in the video casts around, picks up a bright green felt tip pen and a blank piece of paper. She begins drawing a shape which isn't visible from the camera's perspective, while still talking. But once you get a little further down the road, you start to see a pattern emerging in the data. You need to have the training in memetic science, but once you have that training and you have the data in front of you, it only takes a little extra effort to arrange those data points in conceptual space and draw a contour through them. Those data points are points on 3125's hull, those manifestations are its shadows and casts on our reality. You link 4 or 5 different SCPs together into a single shape and you see it, and it sees you. So let's give me my own thing. I would advise against giving up. I know how bad it can feel, Lily, but always keep going if you can. Dungeoning while you call it to. There. She's still drawing. It's detailed. She doesn't look up, and her tone of voice is distant, almost as if she's narrating the tail end of a frightening children's story. When that happens, when you make eye contact, it kills you. It kills you and it kills anyone who thinks like you. Physical distance doesn't matter. It's about mental proximity. Anybody with the same ideas, anybody in the same headspace, it kills your collaborators, your whole research team. It kills your parents, it kills your children. You become absent humans, human-shaped shells surrounding holes in reality, and when it's done, your project is a hole in the ground, and nobody knows what 3125 is anymore. It's a black hole in anti-memetic science, consuming unwary researchers and yielding no information, only detectable through indirect observation. A true description of what 3125 is, or even an allusion to what it is, constitutes a containment breach, and it's a lethal indirect cognito hazard. Do you see? It's a defense mechanism. This information swallowing behavior is just the outer layer, the poison coating. It protects the entity from discovering while it infests our reality. And as years pass, the manifestations will continue, growing denser and knitting together, until the whole world is drowning in them, and everybody will be screaming, "Why did nobody realize what was happening?" And nobody will answer, because everyone who realized was killed by this system. Do you see it, Marion? See it now. Wheeler is at the core of the foundation of anti-memetic science. She had all the raw data readily accessible. There are extensive written calculations on the walls, but she doesn't need to read them. She can do them in her head. All it took was the slightest push, the slightest suggestion. Staring through the laptop screen, eyes wide and defocused, she understands how it all links together. She sees 3125. She feels dwarfed by it. She's encountered terrible, powerful ideas before at every level of memeticality, and subdued them or even recruited them. But what she's picturing now is on another order of magnitude from what she knew to be possible. Now she knows it's there, she can feel it like cosmic radiation, boring holes in the world with its thousands of manifestations, and freely laying waste to anybody who recognizes the larger pattern. It's not of reality, not of humanity. It's from a higher, worse place, and it's descending. The other Wheeler presents her finished diagram. She's drawn a mutated, fractally complex grasping hand with 5-fold symmetry. It has no wrist or arm, just 5 long human fingers pointing in 5 directions. At its core there's a pentagonal opening which could be a mouth. But the diagram was already there. It's plastered across the wall in the background of the video, plain as day, a meticulous collage of green, easily 2 meters in diameter, and showing the same meme complex to 100 levels in the same level of detail. There are small diagrams of different elevations arrayed around it, like spores, and its arms are spread wide around the seated Wheeler, who sits directly in front of the mouth with her back to it. Wheeler, watching, does not realise this, and does not turn around. How do you fight an enemy without ever discovering it exists? The Wheeler in the video asks. How do you win without even realising you're at war? What do we do? 7 years ago, there were more than 400 anti-memetics research groups worldwide, government agencies, military branches, private corporations, university projects. Many of them were GOIs or subdivision of GOIs. We were allied with most of them, who were at the spearhead of an anti-memetics coalition which spanned the whole globe and thousands upon thousands of people. None of these groups still exist. The last one ceased to exist sometime in the last 72 hours. 3 years ago, Foundation Anti-Memetics was an organisation of more than 4,000 people. Now it's 90. There's no war. We've lost the war. It's over. This is the mopping up operation. The only reason we still exist at all is because we have better amnestic biochemistry than anybody else in the world, because that's all you can do when you see 3125. Run away and try to forget what you saw. Seek oblivion in chemicals or alcohol or head trauma. And even that can't work every time. It's circling in. We meet it over and over again and we don't realise. There's no way we can stop ourselves from rediscovering it. We're too damn smart. She points at something on the wall, out of the view of the laptop's camera. Wheeler, watching, turns to look. In the upper corner of the room, there's a constellation of dizzyingly complicated schematics. Bart Hugh's initials are on every page. There's a machine we could build. All it would take is 80 years. A lab as big as West Virginia and all the money in the world. Nothing the O5 Council would blink at if we went to them. But how do we build that machine without any of us realising what it's for? It would be like building and launching Apollo 11 without a single engineer deducing that the moon exists. The logistics would be insane, but the secrecy would be well past impossible. Someone would start asking questions, and then it would be over, so what do? Find another way, Wheeler says in an unhearing recording. The fatalistic tone of voice makes her angry. What the hell's wrong with you? I could tell everyone to walk away. I could send a little message to myself saying, there's danger down this road, you should disband the antimatics division and pursue other projects. But I'd be suspicious. I'd start asking questions, and then it would be over. Wheeler's now crouched in front of the video, trying to understand what she's watching. What's wrong, Marion? Are you okay? I could kill myself in here, the recording says. My team would find 3125 without me, and then they'd have to fight 3125 without me. It's going to happen soon. Whatever happens in the next 2 months at the most. This year, it'll be over. I may die in here anyway. I'm on so many amnestic drugs that my endocrine system is shutting down. Taking amnestics at the same time is the chemical equivalent to trepanation. Excuse me. I don't remember the last time I slept without having a nightmare about Adam. I'm starting to forget whether 4987 is a real thing or just a number I gave to my life. You're not like this, Wheeler whispers. You're stronger than this. What happened to you? Who's Adam? I don't know how we survive this. I don't know how we win. We're the last ones in the world. After us, there's nobody. Wheeler shakes her head, not believing it. So I'm done. I'm going to walk out of this door and forget who I am, and I'm going to be you, Marion. And then you'll have to figure a way out of this, because I can't. She gets up and moves off screen. She can be heard breathing deeply. Her speech is starting to distort. God, my eyes hurt. I think it's starting to... Okay. I think it's starting to fall my inside. There's the sound of a door opening, then a piercing pulse of sound and light which terminates the recording. Wow. Wheeler stares at the dark screen for a long minute. She's never seen herself so weak, and it damages her ego a great deal to see that it's possible. She feels disconnected from what she saw, like it happened in an alternate universe. She feels revulsed and appalled by that vision of her, more so to know that that version was still inside her somewhere. It doesn't make sense. I'm looking at all the same facts. What made her give up? What did she know that I don't? Who was Adam? The answer to this question is so obvious and sickening that she seems instinctively distrusted it. She circles around the answer, probing it, trying to find some reasons to reject it, but it's inescapable. Adam was someone she knew when the video was recorded, now completely removed from her memory. Adam was someone the thought of whose safety paralysed her with fear. Someone in the same headspace, someone she couldn't bear to lose. And then she lost. But what if? How did the room get built in the first place? Anybody's guess. Wheeler imagines Hughes building it as a proof of concept, followed by a cascading series of lucky chances which led to it becoming the war room. Someone discovered 3125 at random, while sealed in the room. They wrote notes to themselves which set up a skeletal external SCP database entry and the containment procedures. Most of the paperwork and computer hardware was left behind by the later visitors. It could have happened. But what if there's another room? Unbidden, a cute factoid came back to her right then. Site 41 is almost completely vacant. In particular, 200 meters below Site 41, there's an empty heavy engineering lab, an underground complex the size of a hockey stadium, self-contained, in pristine condition, totally disused, sealed up, original purpose forgotten. Nobody's entered it in living memory, but who knows how many decades back by a dead generation of anti-memeticists. What if that's where we build our weapon? Do I really believe I'm that smart? That my team and I had that much foresight? That we got that lucky? She turns to look at the airlock, running numbers in her head. And that's it. And that's anti-memetics division staff, other than me, 38, 42 days until the next iteration. That's past the end of the year. It'll be too late if I leave this room now. I'll never be back. The plan I have now is the best plan there's ever going to be. We're the last ones in the world. After us, there's nobody. Kim is so deeply buried in work at his terminal, and the airlock is so quiet that he almost doesn't notice when it starts to cycle again. We need to check you for notes, he begins, but then he sees that Marion Wheeler is curled up in the bottom of the narrow cylinder, panting as though she just finished a marathon run. Kim holds out her hand, but she shakes her head, electing to stay lying down, knees bent up to her chest, sucking down lungfuls of air. What in the world happened in there? Kim asks. Just need, she gasps, to breathe. Be okay in a second. I think I blanked out for a moment. Might have inhaled some. Oh, I think I'm okay. I remember the plan. Kim looks confused and worried for a second. Then they replace them. She won't be able to remember anything. What did you do? Hit my head, Wheeler says, then goes back to concentrating on breathing properly. She suddenly becomes acutely aware that Kim has her effectively cornered. Disliking this configuration for reasons which she's only gradually pulling back together, she leaves herself up to one shoulder and tries to stand. Kim puts a hand on her shoulder and pushes her back down. You look terrible, he says. There's something in your neck. Do you see that? He points to her throat, then taps the same spot on his own. What? On your neck? And full high. You've been infected by whatever was in there. We need to act quickly. He reaches for his keyring and unthreads a Swiss Army knife and unfolds a short gleaming blade. He does this in such a methodical, ordinary way that Wheeler almost forgets to react when he leans down towards her to cut her throat. Almost. She grips his wrist. They're locked like that for a moment, a tableau. She looks into Paul Kim's eyes, but it isn't his eye anymore. She squints, wondering if she's making eye contact with anything but a hole in space. She already feels the force bearing down on her own skull, trying to drill into it, but she knows its shape, and that means she can hold out, maybe for a few minutes. She had hoped, prayed that Kim would not succumb so quickly, and in a crazed little way she thought there would be at least a sign, a theatrical doubting over as his mind was wrenched out of his socket. Kim's wrist spasms as he tries to lunge with the knife. Wheeler parries and its tip glances off the airlock interior wall with a screech. They scuffle for an awkward second, then she boots Kim in the stomach with both feet, sending him sprawling in the antechamber. She launches out of the airlock, dives over him and sprints away from the containment unit. She feels 3125 following her and she runs, like a spotlight. She hears a crash in another part of the site as the first piece of the ceiling caves in. It's cheerful. Yeah. And now we're going on to the last section of the Anti-Memetics Division Act 1 tales. Or tale. I've dropped frames at some point. I want to know exactly how. Hey, buddy. Okay. This one is called... Ooh. It's not called a yawn. It's called Your Last First Day. Marion Wheeler is curled in the corner of Site 41's main freight elevator, descending, clutching a shiny red ray gun almost as long as she is tall. The gun has a two-tined prong instead of a barrel, and its stock is a weirdly asymmetrical mass of pipework, more like a Swiss watch or a small intestinal tract than the weapon. The gun is SCP-7381, and it comes from a long-dead planet, not too distant a planet when all is said and done, which conventional astronomy has yet to observe. A tornado of violence and destruction is tearing through Site 41 and through the minds of everybody working at Site 41. Ceilings are being brought down, the site pharmacy is sucking a hole at the side of the building, the armory is buried, that's why she had to go through Area 9 and is now toting anomalous weaponry instead. The Anti-Memetics Division operatives she meets in the corridors are all broken. Some of them curled up and raving while their minds evaporate, and they die one memory at a time. Some infected with a collection of ideas which compel them to shout guttural phrases in strange languages, and to procure blades, never guns, and work on these demented victims, and each other, and themselves. Wheeler doesn't recognise any of the other people. Their faces are all wrong, torn up with hatred and misery and vindictive glee. She's been trying to avoid fighting, but she's had to kill one in self-defense. Fired at his heart, 7381 simply erased a half-meter wide cylinder of matter, removing his upper torso and lower jaw. Jesus Christ! He fell to the ground in 4 pieces. 7381's beam is invisible, silent, and recoilless. It was like using a child's toy gun. Wheeler is petrified, but more than that, angry. This is too much, she says out loud, willing her heart to rate back under control. I can't deal with this. I shouldn't have to deal with this. It's my fucking first day. But how much sense does that make? Wheeler studies her reflection in the dark glass of the elevator control panel as she tours the interior of her own skull, examining her thought processes. There are hints there which would be difficult to articulate to someone who didn't know her as well as she knows herself. She isn't thinking like a newbie. She's instinctively breaking the problem apart the way an experienced Foundation operative should. Hell, a newbie wouldn't even know how to carry out a detailed psychological self-examination of this kind. A newbie wouldn't think of it. A newbie would just suffocate. The first thing it did when it saw me, she explains her reflection, was eat everything I knew about the division and everything I knew about it. If I had a plan, it ate the plan, but I'm still me, so I can come up with that plan again. It's already right in front of me. I just need to see it. If I were me, what would my plan have been? She scratches absently at her left wrist. Taking some hardcore monastic drugs would have been the would have been a smart first step, I guess, she mutters, reinforcing my mind so it can't erase the rest of the steps. Damn. Nearest source of monastic medicine is the site pharmacy, but it's already been destroyed. In any case, the elevator is headed down away from it. No, stop. The pharmacy's been destroyed. How do I know that? Well, because she was there. She remembers finding the pharmacist crushed to death beneath the fallen medicine cabinet. Her skull an unrecognizable splatter of scarlet. She remembers the floor being torn away beneath her feet and only barely making it out of that portion of the building alive. She remembers a modular package coloured safety orange, with an enormous black Z on it. Her heart nearly stops this. Oh God, what did I do? She remembers dozens of warning signs covering the package. She remembers the 3-factor authorization procedure she had to follow to get into the sealed chamber where it was stored. She remembers a centimetre-thick book of medical advisory information, which she discarded, and rolling her left sleeve back, she finds a fresh needle mark with a speck of blood, and remembers administering the injection. This was my plan? This is what it takes to fight 3125? I've killed myself. Class Z mnestics are the last word in biochemical memory fortification. Class Z mnestics permanently destroy the subject's ability to forget. The result is perfectly eidetic memory and perfect immunity to arbitrarily strong anti-mimetic interference. The dose is taking effect now. Willa didn't read the book because she already knew every word of it. She knows everything that's about to happen to her. She can already feel her mind hardening like steel and the developing symptoms of extreme sensory overload. She can see everything. There are extra buttons on the elevator control panel, the lowest of which, the 30th floor below ground level, she somehow already pushed. The walls of the elevator are covered with graffiti scrawled by the desperate and dying, people whose conceptual presence was eradicated from reality years earlier by the Alistair Gray antimetic kill agent, reducing them to a level of ghosts. In one corner of the freight elevator there's even a half corpse, unidentifiable, so many layers removed from reality that not even flies can smell it, its cells winking out of existence asymptomatically over the course of years. There's a fistful of tiny white worms exploring the floor of the elevator car, near where she's sitting, revolted with her shovels back from them, shaking one or two more of them out of her hair. Ugh. The worms are among the most widespread and successfully anti-mimetically cloaked organisms in the world. They're everywhere, in every biome, in every room. She can hear a long, alarming drone noise, a continual roaring which has the texture of ambient noise and is continually getting louder. It's as if it's been there her entire life, and it's only now she's begun to hear it. It's too much data, too much sound, too much light. Having her eyes open is like jamming them full of needles. She clamps her hands over her ears and screws her eyes up. Even like this, she feels the vibration of the elevator's slow descent and the heat of the failed air conditioning, and the movement of her clothes on her skin. And meanwhile, her vision is flooding instead of with what could be hallucinations. The human sensorium routinely generates huge amounts of data, and the human brain is adapted to discard almost all of that data nearly immediately. Altering the brain's behavior to retain that data is extremely dangerous, even for very short time spans. Willa takes one hand away from her ear just long enough to punch the metal wall of the elevator car, bloodying 2 knuckles. The pain gives her a focal point, a memory which screams a little louder than the rest, and she finds the plan. She doesn't remember it, she bootstraps it from its first principles. In a handful of minutes, she's done like she's done 100 times before. I know how to beat you, she says. No, 3125 says to her. You don't. The elevator stops at the 30th floor below ground and its doors grind open. They wait open for a long time. Further up the elevator shaft, there are distant rumbles and more parts of Site-41 being reduced to crumbs. Still crouched in the corner, Wheeler mutters, SCP-3125 doesn't have a voice. Of course I do, it replies. SCP-3125 is a 5-dimensional anomalous meta-sized mass of bad memes and anti-memes, and everything in between, seeping through to our physical reality. It isn't coherent and it isn't intelligent. It can't communicate. This is an auditory hallucination. 3125 scoffs. You know what I hate most about you, Marion? You're consistently, eternally wrong, and yet you're still alive. All those lost battles, every year of that entire lost war, but somehow you always cobble together enough dumb luck to walk away unscathed. The eternal sole survivor. You don't deserve that kind of luck. Nobody does. While it's talking, Wheeler leans hard on the ray gun to get to her feet. She lodges one shoulder against the wall of the elevator car, still with her eyes closed. She braces herself and opens her eyes. The corridor ahead is empty. There's an airlock at the far end, this one large enough to drive a truck through, built from ultra-toughened white metal alloy in Bart Hughes' established style. There's a panel beside the airlock. She closes her eyes again and hobbles forward, using the ray gun as a crutch, stretching one hand out to get her into guidance. Someone has to be last, she says, gritting her teeth. Someone has to be the best. Your team is dead. 3125 says, their minds have been pulled out like eyeballs. They're hollow people with holes in space where their brains were. The war is over. Finally. It's just you, Marion, a division of 1, dying from monastic overdose, 200 meters underground, cared for by no one, known to exist to no one, up against an immortal, unkillable idea. Wheeler reaches the airlock and fumbles blindly with the panel until she finds a slot for her keycard. For a few seconds, it seems as if nothing is happening. Then a yellow light flashes. The enormous mechanical interlocks unlatch and the door cycles open with all the fuss of a flower's petal unfurling. Noise, Hughes always held, is a symptom of imperfect engineering. Behind her, she hears the freight elevator close up and return to ground level. She knows that someone has summoned it, intending to pursue her. Ideas can be killed, she says, stepping into the airlock. How? With better ideas. As the airlock cycles close, so does the hermetic seal. 3125 is shut out. If something can cross over from conceptual space into reality, taking physical form, then something can cross in the opposite direction. It must be possible to take a physical entity and mechanically extract the idea which it embodies, amplify that idea and broadcast it up into conceptual space. A bigger idea, a better idea, one designed specifically to fight 3125. An ideal, a movement, a hero. The machine Wheeler needed to build is the size of an Olympic stadium, and she doesn't have a fraction of the heavy memetic engineering experience to do it, let alone the material resources or the time. But she knows, someone taught her, she doesn't remember who, that an anti-memetics division operative is as good on their first day as they're likely to be. At the same time must be a true division as a whole. She tells herself, we won this war on the day it began, when we encountered 3125 for the first time. We built this bunker. Bart Hughes faked his death and sequestered himself here so he could work uninterrupted, while the rest of the division held on for as long as humanly possible, buying time for this moment. I know this is what I did because it's what I would have done. I'm the final component. He's waiting for me. The space beyond the airlock is gigantic, structured and lit like an aircraft hangar and filled with hot, stale, dry air. Wheeler, still mostly blind, stumbles forward across an expanse of more than a hectare of flat, dusty epoxy flooring. Hughes, she shouts into the void. It's time. Nothing comes back but the echo. She glances up for a second. The space is empty. The castle sign mimetic amplification broadcasting into which Bart Hughes was meant to be building is absolutely absent. Hughes himself is absent. Maybe the entire machine is anti-memetically cloaked, she wonders momentarily. It would be a smart way to conceal the operation even from the rest of the Foundation, but her brain is curdling in the strongest mimetic drugs ever manufactured. There's genuinely nothing there. Almost nothing. Excuse me. Almost nothing. At the centre of the space is a small outpost, a group of trestle tables with tools and toolboxes scattered about the place. Parked behind it is an unmarked military truck with flat tyres. Excuse me. On the back of the truck is a squat, squarish machine the size of a shipping container, with unshielded wiring and exposed pipework, and a long cable leading to a heavy-duty control panel on the floor. To the untrained eye, it's not at all clear what the machine is designed to do. It's the anti-memetic equivalent to the hydrogen bomb. The division's answer to a site nuclear warhead. Activated, it would contaminate Site 41 and everything and everyone on it with anti-memetic radiation. There would be no Site 41 and no division afterwards. Nothing any of the escaping infectious staff did could have had any effect on the real world. It's the wrong machine. It can't destroy or contain 3125, or even injure it. All it can do is sterilize today's outbreak. The other symptoms will persist. 50 or 10 or 5 years from now, or maybe 1 year, or maybe tomorrow, 3125 will return, bringing with it its MK-class end-of-the-world scenario. Human civilization will be entirely eradicated as an abstract concept, and be replaced with something unimaginably worse. There will be no one to fight it. Wheeler leans there on the railgun for a long moment, the pressure of information in her mind continually increasing, reaches a point where she can't take it anymore, and she starts to break. Class Z has been in her system for long enough now that she knows for a fact she has irreversible brain damage. There is no antidote. She'll be lucid for another hour and spend the remaining 2 or 3 hours of her life vegetative. That's right, she thinks. It's almost a relief. This is good. This is right. I've survived too long. I forgot what universe this was. For a while there I thought maybe this was the universe where we win sometimes. The agony in her head is like an ice axe now. She drops the ray gun with a clatter, sinks to her knees, lies down and waits for either death or a better idea. A being superficially resembling Paul Kim arrives at the outer airlock door. It examines the airlock uncomprehendingly for a few moments, then finds the keycard slot. It hunts methodically through Kim's pockets, then remembers the keycard around its neck. The airlock cycles once more, and not Kim goes through. Behind it, the freight elevator returns to ground level a third time, to fetch the rest. In the next room, the being which is not Paul Kim finds Wheeler, unconscious with the ray gun dropped beside her. There's also a military truck, which it disregards. Not Kim lets its keycard fall from its fingers and scoops up the ray gun. For a moment it contemplates the unconscious Wheeler and examines the gun itself, remembering how it works. It turns back to face the airlock and fires, punching fat cylindrical holes in the white metal of the inner door until it's gone. Then the outer door too, breaching the hermetic seal. A faint smile returns to Not Kim's face as 3125 and its familiar comforting signals flood into the bunker. A dozen more non-people are arriving by the front elevator, former anti-memetics division bodies. I found her, Not Kim calls out to them. It drops the ray gun where it's standing, as if it simply forgot that it had been carrying anything, and pulls out its knife again. It holds the knife between two fingers in a casual, offhand sort of way, as if it were a pencil or screwdriver. The infected non-people gather with Not Kim and around Wheeler, looking down at her with alien expressions of disgust or pity or malice. Why isn't she opening up properly, someone asks. She can't meet them unless she wants the signals. Start with her eyes, says someone else. It'll make the rest of her easy to correct. Not Kim leans down to start work, then hesitates, its knife a few centimetres from Wheeler's eye. She's whispering something, so quietly that only it can hear her clearly. None of this happened, Paul, she says. You and I never existed. There is no anti-memetics division. There's a sharp click as the bomb finishes its powering up sequence. Nobody in the room can hear this but Wheeler. Nobody in the room can perceive the bomb but Wheeler. All they can see is an empty truck. The world goes black. Oh, fuck. Jesus Christ, that was a journey. That wasn't just a chip, that was a whole fucking journey. Christ almighty. That was definitely amazing. That was very, very good. Thank you very much to you on the grass for recommending that series of 5 Tales. That was really good. Phoenix Alarm, welcome. How's the cold dragon? I'm not cold. The thing, I'm not. I wish I was, but I'm not cold. It is... Let me have a look. It's 12 degrees Celsius and overcast, and I'm not cold. I really wish I was, but I'm not. Thank you for the hydration reminder, Warp. Marion Wheeler is last and the best. Yep. That was really good. Okay, now I'm going to change that to that, because we will have one more tale, and this one was suggested by Pokey. When Pokey learned that I was starting to do tales, they suggested this one called Fear Alone. As it's a Pokey suggestion, I'm expecting it's going to be very good, because this is Pokey. Their knowledge of SCP entries and being, the really, really interesting and deeply cosmically disturbing is exceptional. They're the ones who basically pointed me to one of my favourite ones, SCP-5000, which is really good. You're the photo you posted? Which one? Pokey is an SCP. I still maintain that Pokey is the administrator of the SCP Foundation. It's the only thing that makes sense. My beloved, I'm guessing that's the author. $5,000 strip. It is. It's such a strip. There's also a game made from it. Pokey's all the SCP much. Dragging the show with tea and donuts. Oh yeah, I saw that. I reacted to it. Even that would be too hot for me though, and also no thanks on the donuts. But yeah. The two doctors stood side by side in the tiny room, facing the locked door on the other side of the one they had just entered through. The older of the two quietly flipped through a number of pages in a leather-bound journal, while the younger anxiously adjusted and readjusted and made sure not to lock his knees. The light here seemed brighter. The younger might have noted, the air thick with something foreboding, had his mind not been racing through the millions of scenarios that might await him on the other side of the door. He had tried a conversation with the elder doctor earlier, but his nervousness had broken through and his voice had cracked, and the other man had raised an eyebrow and returned to his notes. Excuse me. It was as if an eternity had passed before they finally heard a voice crackle over the speakers in the room. Dr. Van Divier, the elder, raised an eyebrow yet again as Dr. Montgomery, the younger, jumped at the sound. Please state your name as it appears in the Foundation personnel database and submit your level 4 Foundation identification number and passcode. The voice spoke clearly, its tone indicating a lifetime of repetition. Dr. Van Divier coughed slightly and spoke. Dr. Gregory Arnold Van Divier, identification number 4511-12894-19-055. Passcode 18840-12884-19078-00004. What kind of person can remember that passcode? There was the slightest of hesitation before the voice cut through again, asking the same Montgomery. The elder doctor looked over to him, something akin to sympathy momentarily crossing his eyes. Relax, he spoke softly. Just recite the number. Montgomery swallowed, took a deep breath, and recited his own information. Dr. Anderson Dean Montgomery, identification 9280-27112-17-054. Passcode, a brief evidence of doubt struck him, but passed when he saw Vandivia's reassuring nod. 16738-17489-13782-00004. Actual fuck. Both men stood silently again, the last of Montgomery's words hanging in the air. Another brief pause, another eternity, and the door in front of them clicked. Enter Dr. Vandivia and Dr. Montgomery. The sliding panel moved quietly into the wall, with a dull wave of stale, recycled air passed over them. Montgomery was reminded of his time practicing within a prison, where every breath of men isolation hung around them like a shroud. The memory caused him to falter briefly, while Dr. Vandivia moved through the entrance. Come along now, he said over his shoulder. We've not much further to go. We say stroke is it is a dash hyphen. Because I know that I completely swap over which terms I use, but yeah, in this case it's the hyphen. Foundation is nuts. This is true. The two walked in silence down the long white hallway. There were cameras every 50 feet or so, Montgomery had been told. The floor below them was tile, and every step echoed off the walls around them, announcing their arrival like an army of tiny drummers. As the temperature dropped slightly, Montgomery could feel beads of sweat forming on the back of his neck, persistent in nature despite the chill. Ahead of them was a set of double doors. To the side of the doors was a brass information plaque, like the dozens of others across the site. As they approached it, the etching on the plaque became visible, causing Montgomery's throat to catch. Item number, SCP-3231/7. Object class, Cater. Vandivia was unfazed and quickly pushed through to the other side. Montgomery gave him a moment of pause to take a deep breath, then did the same. The scene on the other side of the door was fairly quiet, with a number of doctors standing around various displays looking at readouts and information that was being processed on the machines behind them. There was an air of solemnity about them, and the gravity of the room struck Montgomery like a ton of bricks. A clock on the wall read 1945 in bright red numerals, and another to the side was counting down to 0. A tall man in a white jacket noticed the two men and strode quickly across to greet them. He shook Vandivia's head first and exchanged some hushed words, then prompted Montgomery to do the same. Good evening, Dr. Montgomery, he said, his expression unwavering behind a bushy grey moustache. Oliver Targus, please, a pleasure to meet you. Montgomery met the handshake. Same. Dr. Targus walked him over to a series of consoles displaying medical information and vital statistics. Dr. Montgomery, this is your workstation here. It will give you an opportunity to check out the sensors in a little bit and see if you want to make any adjustments. He pointed over towards a side screen which showed a video feed of an empty white room. This is the video display of the procedure room. We don't keep staff members in the room during the procedure, so this will be your eyes and ears throughout. That look all right? Montgomery nodded. He peered at the screens, observed the information about heart rate and EEG readouts, and for a moment felt comfortable. This was his element, his wheelhouse. Then his eyes flickered to the screen containing a live ultrasound feed, and his own heart rate began to accelerate. He turned quickly to avoid letting his nerves show. This looks just fine. What else am I going to be required to do? Dr. Targus smiled briefly, and then led him over to a large observation window. The window sat above a white room, the same room from the video feed he imagined. A single door was on the side of the room to his right. He looked across the way and saw other doctors and researchers standing on the other side of the command room, looking in through the observation window on their side. Montgomery wondered what they were all here to do. He decided it probably wasn't worth thinking about. Here in a few minutes, we're going to begin the procedure. Once you get started, it progresses pretty quickly, so you'll have to keep your wits about you with those monitors. If you notice anything out of the ordinary, report to Dr. Brunel over there. He pointed across the room to a female doctor with shoulder-length blonde hair, who was herself going over a packet of notes with another short male doctor. She's in charge of medical stability, and she'll be just outside the observation room during the procedure. You'll be able to page her at your station. She'll be your primary contact for other tasks in the assignment. Montgomery looked up after a moment and nodded to Dr. Targus, staring at him. I understand your anxiety, Dean, he smiled slightly again. We were all like you at one point, but understand the importance of our task here and perform your job with the excellence that brought you here. Everything will be fine. Montgomery nodded and swallowed. Thank you, Doctor. Just reassignment nerves, you know. He tried to get a weak smile out, but it felt it falter on his lips. Just then a tone buzzed through the command room, followed by the same calm voice in the entrance hall. Warning, procedure 110 Montauk will begin in 5 minutes. All personnel, please support your stations. Targus patted Montgomery on the back. Relax, Doctor. I think you'll find this assignment isn't so bad. With that, the tan doctor walked off to a station across the command room. Montgomery paused for a moment to look down into the observation room, where a group of nurses in white scrubs were rolling a small bed through the now open door. Oh god, there's Montauk. I think so. After a few seconds, he moved quickly to his station. Taking his seat, his eyes moved immediately to the video screen, and he watched as nurses setting up the rest of the room. A rug had been moved into the room, as well as a small table next to the bed, a lamp, and some bedding. Montgomery felt his stomach drop slightly, and then looked again towards the clock above the observation window. It read 19:59, and the one next to it said 24. It was almost time. The screens in front of him hummed softly, and the information contained within pushed on tirelessly. He made a few notes and opened a booklet of information he had brought with him, and then he heard the last tone. All staff personnel, procedure 110 Montauk has begun. He turned to look at the clock again and noticed the large metal plates had slid down over the observation windows, obscuring the room from view. Looking back to his video feed, he saw the lights within the room had dimmed, and the only illumination that remained was the lamp on the table. The door on the wall stood open again, and two more nurses walked out. A small girl was between them. She was no older than 8, Montgomery thought. Did not exactly look like he had thought she might. Her hair was cut very short, barely a highlight against her olive skin. She moved awkwardly, and when she noticed, and it was then he noticed her stomach. It bulged against the surgical gown she wore, and turned her steps into an awkward, plodding gait. The nurses guided her towards the bed and helped her up onto it. One of them adjusted her pillow, the other tucked in the blankets. Finished, one of the nurses leaned down and said something to the little girl, then joined the other before exiting the room. Montgomery thought this peculiar and wondered if anybody else in the room had noticed it. He looked up as another voice cracked across the intercom. He recognized it as Dr. Targus and saw him standing towards the edge of the room, watching a series of screens before him. SCP-231-7 is in place. Is the D-class personnel ready? There was a silence, and then, okay, open the door, release the subject. Turning back to his feed, Montgomery watched as a dark-skinned man in a standard Foundation grey jumpsuit walked slowly through the open doorway. As the door slid shut behind him, the man turned slightly and Montgomery saw that he had something in his hand. He squinted, trying to get a better look at it, but it was obscured when the man turned back towards the little girl in the bed. With every step he took towards the centre of the observation room, the hairs on the back of Montgomery's neck grew ever higher, and he could feel his blood pounding through his veins, screaming against them for release. D55318, he heard Dr. Targus say distantly. You may begin. Montgomery could not look away. His eyes would not allow it. Although his mind clawed desperately towards something, anything else, the D-class moved next to the bedside, and a small girl with a small belly looked up at him, naive to her impending fate, and smiled. Montgomery choked back a cry, but stopped suddenly when he saw the D-class move a stool that had been hidden behind the little table up the bedside. The man sat down, and through the mics with the observation room, he heard the man speak. Snowing for you, damn. Snurr. Hello again, Catherine, he said, his voice soft. I brought you a new one tonight. It's called Goodnight Moon. Is that okay? It's a children's book. It's a bedtime story. The little girl nodded vigorously and clutched a stuffed rabbit up next to her. D-class opened the book he had been holding and began to read. Montgomery could not move. He could not breathe. His eyes darted wildly around the room, trying to find another person as incredulous as he. He found none, as no one else had turned them from their monitors at all. Everybody else in the room was going about their business as usual, making notes, speaking softly into their headsets. Even Dr. Targus had not budged, and if anything, Montgomery might have said he looked bored. He turned back towards his displays and tried to make notes about variations in her pulse, blood pressure, skin temperature, but couldn't put his eyes away from the video feed. The D-class continued to read through the book, bringing his voice up only slightly to emphasize certain passages. Hey gentlemen, and welcome. Won't be here long as eating dinner and go back to sleep. Entirely fair. This continued on for 10 minutes, though to Montgomery it might as well have been a lifetime. He listened to every word, his mind racing. This is not what it was supposed to be. What's happening? What is this? He called back to when he first heard that he was being assigned to SCP-231. He remembered how his co-workers at Site-81 had talked and tried to console him, told them it wouldn't be too bad after the posted assignment and amnestic treatment. He had heard things that they said about 231, about the convicted sex offenders required for the containment protocols, about what they did to the little girl. That was not happening. The man looked hard, yes, and Montgomery couldn't believe he was a felon, but he spoke easily and not once touched 231-7. He simply continued to read, all the while looking up occasionally at the little girl. She was moments from sleep, and before the D-class had finished the book, she had passed out completely. The man laid the book down, stood up, rubbed the sleeping child's head slightly, and then walked out of the room. The lamp within the observation chamber dimmed, and the lights in the command room came back up. There was a buzz of approval around him, and when Montgomery finally managed to pull his eyes away from the screen, he saw that the other staff members were finishing up procedure reports, signing the necessary documents, typing away at their computers, and otherwise not panicking. Dr. Montgomery spun quickly as he felt somebody come up behind him, and sighed when he realized it was just Dr. Targus. The old man smiled again. How are you, Doctor? Did you notice any abnormalities with the subject? Montgomery grabbed his notebook and began flipping through it. No abnormalities. Nothing except, he trailed off. Except that procedure 110 Montauk was not what you were anticipating it to be? The young doctor nodded. Targus pulled up a chair and sat next to him. Well, it's usually our policy to debrief new assignments, and if you hadn't been called down here on such short notice, we might have given you a chance to We might have gotten a chance to. The secrecy of this project is paramount, however, so it really isn't that bad, I guess. I'm sure you have some questions. Montgomery insisted, then Stamina replied, it's, why does, I've heard it's, you know, that they, not going to say the word that's said here, but R-word her? Target said, Stoneface. Yes, it's certainly what we've designed the documentation to imply. That would be about as bad as it could get, wouldn't it? A brutal sex crime against a child. Montgomery didn't move. Yes, it would be terrible, deplorable beyond forgiveness, but that's not what Procedure 110 Montauk is, Doctor. He leaned back. Early on in containment to the 231 subjects, we did terrible things to those poor girls. Not as terrible as that, but we were being advised by only a handful of occultists that we had been able to capture and extract information from. That was what they had done to contain the demon, and because of that, it's what we had to do. I was not on the project then, and understandably, many of those doctors, most of them in fact, are no longer with us, as are 231-1 through /6. It was because of our failings that they perished, and it was because of their deaths that we realized we had to do something different. Gods very rarely are bound by the laws of physics, you know. Reality benders can shape the worlds around us at will, turning existence into their plaything. But everything has rules, Dr. Montgomery. He leaned in close. Even gods have rules. Old laws, yes. Arcane, but effective. We began to look more closely into information we had gathered about the Scarlet King, about the entity itself, within all those documents, all the collected material we had at our disposal, and discovered something else. He leaned back again. The demon does not need to be contained by horrifying, disgusting acts, Montgomery. The demon only needs to believe that horrifying, disgusting acts are being done in its name. The documentation we created, the terrible rumours about Procedure 110 Montauk, the reports of suicide by the doctors working on this project, all of it, it's all a charade. All of it is to convince the demon that we are doing the worst thing possible to this girl. These procedures, this campaign of fear, has allowed us to sow dread into the hearts of Foundation personnel, and this dread satisfies the monster. As long as so many people believe we are doing terrible things, the monster will continue to believe we are doing terrible things. There is power in symbols, Doctor. The old gods know this, and the old gods are bound by it. The Scarlet King does not have eyes to see brutality, does not have ears to hear screams, does not have a nose to smell blood, but the Scarlet King can sense fear, and we have given it fear. Fear alone is all that it ever required. The old doctor stopped and closed his eyes. Both men had sat in silence as a number of other researchers filed past him into the hallway outside the command room. Once most of them had passed, Montgomery spoke up. And the reading? The bedtime stories? Targus nodded. Catherine cannot sleep without a bedtime story. How she manages to sleep at all is a wonder to me, but an act of some kind was required to convince the demon. In the eyes of the Scarlet King, Dr. Montgomery. He said, reading those bedtime stories is the worst possible thing we could be doing to her. Montgomery nodded, understanding dawning on him. He glanced back towards the steel-plated observation room windows. The steel plates, though, not keeping staff members in the room. Targus opened his eyes. The danger is still real, Doctor. Loss of containment of SCP-231-7 will likely result in an XK. We have precautions in place, woven into the theatre of Procedure 110 Montauk. Do not think the way we contain this demon makes it any less dangerous. Indeed, it is like the most dangerous entity we've managed to contain. But there are things that we will not do, Montgomery. There are things too abhorrent, and even implying such makes me feel filthy. But if implying is all we have to do, well, I can sleep at night. Another doctor came up to Targus, and with a brief farewell, the doctor hurried off to attend to some other part of the room. Montgomery sat quietly for a time, thinking everything over. He turned to look at the video feed screen where the little girl was sleeping soundly in her bed, stuffed rabbit tucked in between her arms. The young doctor felt the anxiety there, but beneath it was something else. The dread had vanished, but the fear remained, quiet and looming. He turned off the monitors, gathered his notes, and left the room. What the fuck? What the fuck? That was... I expected so many different things as that was going along and was not prepared for how it turned out. What the fuck? That was, however, very well written. Let's see. Montauk is fun. It is. Thank you for the hydration moment, Linux. Ethics committee. Yep, the ethics committee are having an absolute field day with that one. I'm pretty sure that in the list of things that Dr. Bright is not allowed to do, I'm pretty sure one of them is Dr. Bright is not allowed to refer to the ethics committee as the fun police. I'm pretty sure that's one of the things Dr. Bright is not allowed to do. It would not surprise me if he's done that. Right, I am going to... Let's see. We're up to 2 hours already. Only 1.5 of which has actually been me reading something. My throat is starting to feel a bit rough, but I don't want to end just yet. I do want to do another SCP. But at the same time, I don't want to throw the request option open for those of people wanting to put a request in and then me only getting one. Doesn't seem fair. Also, doing a random one, I might get something that's, short or crap. Okay, well, this one has come up looking kind of odd, but it's also very long. You got a couple of short anti-mimetic ones? Probably go for one of those. Yes, since just the all 001 proposals, those will be very long. Those will be extremely long, I'm afraid. Because the 001s usually are. And Titan, hello, and welcome to the hydration reminder. Department of Miscommunications is fun. Okay, we'll go with that. Try SCP-4773-2. That'll do. That is in Series 5. And a stuffed bear. I think I've read this. I have. What's it? I think anyway. Yeah, I have read this one before. When was that? I was in the 17th SCP reading stream, which was a while ago now. Yeah, okay, let's see what random provides us with again. Random page 1972. Only gave you 3258. I don't think that might actually be. I haven't done that one. I haven't done either of those. I'm going to go for that one because this one seems could be a bit iffy. So 3258. 3258. God Killers. Yeah, seems fine. That seems fine. We'll go with that one. The interlude of Tinad, it's short, sweet, and great. Interlude. Will that be on Tails again? I should probably just go to the search function. If the search function would actually work consistently. It really doesn't. What I'm going to do is I'll take this one, 2256, as will be the last one we do, and I'll save the other ones that have been suggested in chat for the 23rd stream. SCP 3258 and SCP 001 World's Gone Be. Beautiful would help. Spell beautiful. There we go. Change that. Right. Item number SCP-2256. Object class Euclid. Special containment procedures. Information about 2256 is subject to a gradual arithmetic antimemetic corrosion effect. Corrosion occurs at differing rates depending on the level of detail / accuracy in the information and the physical complexity of the storage medium. In-depth academic papers, photographs, and information stored electronically decay rapidly. Broad descriptions, pencil sketches, and paperwork decay slowly. Therefore, this electronic database entry should describe 2256 only in broad terms. Detailed information about 2256's appearance, theorized evolutionary ancestry, biology, diet, behavior, vocalizations, life cycle, intelligence, ecological role, and cultural significance should be stored in hard copy at Site 19, Vault 1-053. The rate of corrosion in both data sources should be monitored carefully, although at present no technique is known for halting or undoing such corrosion. Although these antimemetic effects linger and raise Euclid classification, 2256 itself is extinct and requires no special containment procedures. Descriptions. 2256 Cryptomorphia gigantus is a species of gigafauna which was endemic to the South Pacific Ocean around the islands of Polynesia. 2256 was one of the very few recorded species to known to have developed rudimentary perpetual antimemetic camouflage, rendering them nearly impossible for other sentient beings to perceive or remember. This adaptation is theorized to have arisen in order to elude predators. 2256 was the largest species to have lived on Earth, resembling spindly, vertically elongated giraffes or brachiosauruses. Is this just the thing from the end of Disco Elysium? Because that's what it seems like already. Adults of the species grew to over 1,000 meters in height. They weighed no more than 4 tons, with most of their mass being camouflaged by a very similar adaptation. With their broad, dish-shaped feet, they are able to walk directly on the surface of the ocean without sinking. 2256 navigated the ocean alone or in her of 2 to as many as 2,000 individuals. They were reluctant to approach land, especially inhabited islands, usually staying more than 30 kilometers offshore. Because of their height, they were visible on the horizon at this distance. Acquisition. Polynesian natives of the island of Makiti used a substance called tuacoca for recreational and religious purposes. As well as being a moderate psychedelic, this drug had monastic properties, suppressing antimemetic effects and making entities camouflaged in this way easier to see and remember. Thus, the Makititians were for hundreds of years the only people able to see 2256, and Makitian mythology, 2256 were wandering spirits whom the god had charged with maintaining the horizon, to ensure that the sky and the water never mixed. They were characterized as well-meaning and friendly, but unintelligent and often deficient in their duties, resulting in storms and typhoons. They were called Polo Ongaku, the ones who walk very slowly. In 1991, an internal biochemistry study revealed that tuacoca bore a strong chemical resemblance to the Foundation's own Class W monastic. A Foundation anthropologist was assigned to follow the Makititian legend and become the first outsider to observe 2256. An observation was quickly on the island to study the creatures. Routine containment analysis found that 2256 was safe and required no special containment procedures or even particular secrecy. History. SCP I see what's happening here. Immediately proved to be impossible to capture photographically. Photographic negatives of the species faded into transparency over a few minutes. Similar decay affected videotape, audiotape, celluloid film, digital and electronic scans. The observation team soon returned most of their equipment to inventory and proceeded using pencils and At the time, it believed that such recordings would be effectively permanent. I'm sounding like a whole colony of Minecraft villagers with vocalizing all these redacted bits. 2256's population declined slightly in 1992 and 1993, then dropped sharply from 1994 onwards. A combination of contributing factors were observed: illness, infertility, and an inherent rate of stillbirths. In 2002, a field generator was developed which could penetrate and neutralize 2256's antimemetic allowed for conventional photography. The first and only close-up photograph of one of the creatures instantly killed it. It was concluded that direct observation of 2256 is injurious to This adaptation is believed to have arisen as a means of detecting predators, just as 2256's anti-mimetic camouflage protected them from those same predators. Use of heart generator was immediately curtailed. POV, you've entered the trading hall. Oh, you wait until what's coming up. There's so many redacted bits. It was subsequently hypothesized that the Foundation's ongoing passive observation of the species was intense enough to have harmful effects on 2256, and that heart was what was driving the species' heart extinction. Opinions differed sharply heart veracity of this hypothesis over heart thoroughly it should be tested, and over what heart should be done if proved to be true. Several extreme opinions were heart, including heart, exterminating heart to preserve the data, and completely expunging the data to preserve heart 2256. No firm conclusions, heart. In 2003, observation of 2256 was scaled back significantly, and the Foundation heart focused from gathering heart data to analysing heart data. However, 2256's population continued to heart. The last individual died near Tokelau heart October 30th, 2006. Heart 2010, heart discovered heart, the anti-mimetic camouflage heart, also characterized as decay or corrosion, was spreading through paper records of heart. As of heart, more than 60 of heart documents are heart, even with heart strong magnetic dose. The effect is even heart SCP entry itself, despite heart shielding and redundancy in heart system. Since heart extinct, heart new data heart can be generated. It is heart that full contamination. Heart 3 to 8 years. I'm sure that would have been mildly horrifying to listen to or read were I not doing the Minecraft villager noises every single redacted bit. Oh god. Sounds like ducks talking. Oh my god. Oh god. That would drive you quackers. That's when the side of the villagers get out the villager breeding. Goddamn. Never. Christ alive. That got so bad towards the end. Oh. But yeah. As said, that's going to be leaving things for now. Thank you all very much for coming along, for your support. It's all greatly appreciated in whatever way you choose to show it. Next stream for me is hopefully going to be tonight at 8 PM EST, which is 1 AM GMT, where I'm going to be continuing with more, oh, for fuck's sake, more Sherlock Holmes. I don't know. I don't even know what's going to be going on with that. It's proven already it's going to be broken. Yes, Sherlock, you won't be able to watch because his Wi-Fi said at that point. No problem. You'll be missed from being here, but I shall see you the next day then. Tomorrow at, I want to say 11:30 AM EST, which is 4:30 PM BST, sorry, GMT, is where I'm going to be doing the masochism stream. Do more Alan Wake. Thank you all very much for coming along for your support. It's all greatly appreciated. Until next time, have yourselves a good rest of your day, a good evening, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night. Until then, though, stay safe, stay amazing, and see you later. Aww.